Like many established cities across the country, London, Ontario is home to a number of well-known businesses and landmarks. Victoria Park, Labatt Beer, Storybook Gardens, the University of Western Ontario, and Fanshawe College, just to name a few. But aside from all these notable institutions, London is really best known for its arts, whether it be theatre, history, or music. However, the most unique form of art within London is hardly even recognized by the general populace at all, this being the art of comic books. So, what does a city like London have to do with comic books? What, if any, do the characters and creators of modern-day mythology have to do with the Forest City, or even Canada in general? Well, many questions have arisen over the years regarding the acceptance and recognition of comic books. Are they truly an art form? Do they respectfully represent varying genres, styles, politics, and genders? More at home, how have Canadians impacted the comic book scene? In particular, how have women? From London to Toronto, buyers, sellers, writers, artists, and fans shed some light on these questions and reveal more about Canada's contribution to the comic book world, and with some added surprises along the way. Now, to understand and learn about the culture of comic books, it's best to seek out specialty stores that service this particular form of art. It is here where people gather, talk, and socialize every week about the latest news in comic books. It is currently owned and operated by Tim Morris.
Okay, I've owned the store since March of 2001. I had the opportunity to pick it up at that point, and the comic book collector itself has been around since 1979 September. Eddie started the store up then, and we've kept it going for that long anyways, almost 25 years, so that's our anniversary this year.
In what may be considered friendly competition, there's LA Moods.
It was when I was a kid, and it was during a camping trip. And it was like, I think I went into like a variety store, a drugstore, saw these comics, picked them up, and took them and read them. I don't remember the first impressions, but I think it was just the neat stories, you know, violence, and heroism, and everything put together. You know, there was Batman and Superman, and I think it was actually the Walt Simonson Batman.
Try to make it very family friendly rather than a geek place. So I don't want to say the other places are that way, but that's what my goal is. A friendly atmosphere, and that we get a lot more families and young kids in. I like to have a section for the young kids and a toy box for really small kids.
Heroes is one of the largest comic book retail stores in the city. This store has a vast selection of collectibles, ranging from comic books to models, toys, posters, and trading cards.
We grew out of the card boom in the late 80s, early 90s. So we were primarily, I think, when the store started, a sports card store that also sold comics. And comics, their boom was right around then too. So we definitely followed the wave of that. I've shifted away from the cards, although we still sell them, a lot heavier on the merchandise. We never used to sell this many toys. We didn't sell old toys, which I like buying old toy collections and things like that. Just around, it's a tough call, somewhere between 300 and 400 members anyway. Probably around 375 would be my guess.
In contrast, BA Comics is a more intimate store, but with a loyal following.
I've always been reading comics as long as I can remember, and I've accumulated a big collection. I thought I would start to sell it off, so I thought it would make sense to start selling new ones while I was getting rid of the old ones. And slowly the the new comics beast overpowered the old comics. So now this is what I do. I never got into the sports cards, into gaming. I realized I couldn't answer people's questions because I wasn't interested in a lot of that stuff, so I decided to scale back.
Finally, and not to be overlooked, there's Worlds Away.
There's not just one thing. I mean, there's comics, there's British science fiction horror magazines, there's gaming, there's card gaming, die-cast, t-shirts, model kits. If it's sports, I don't touch it.
Well, it's really interesting. In London, there's 5 comic book stores. There's only 4 in Detroit. So go figure. Maybe it's because it's a college town. It's a university town. But then it's an incredibly oppressive conservative town at times. So you wonder, why are there 5 comic book stores? But I suppose each one has its niche.
These 5 comic book stores are indicative of the comic book fan base that exists today. But aside from Canadian retailers, how has the industry itself been affected by the contributions of Canadians? In what ways has Canada impacted the business and helped make it what it is presently?
Canadian characters, we've got Wolverine, Captain Canuck, all of Alpha Flight.
Firstly, one of the most popular comic book heroes of today happens to be a Canadian character, Wolverine, the mutant hero with a super healing factor, unbreakable adamantium bones and razor-sharp claws. He first appeared in issues 180 to 182 of The Incredible Hulk in 1973. Wolverine is a very grim and tenacious character when compared to most traditional superheroes. However, an even darker character to come about in recent history was created by Canadian Todd McFarlane. His character of Spawn, which first debuted in 1982, continues to be a vastly popular character today. And over the years, there have been hundreds of comic books, a big-budget movie, and an animated series featuring McFarlane's hellish crime fighter. The Canadian contribution on comic books, whether as character or creator, in all honesty is nothing new. In fact, it goes way back to the early ages of comic books. Joe Shuster, co-creator of Superman, was born in 1914 in Toronto. At age 9, his family moved to Cleveland where he met writer Jerry Siegel. At first, Shuster and Siegel had a hard time selling their now famous character until DC Comics bought the rights in 1938, after the pair had been working with the company for 2 years. Still, Canada itself has been battling evil for over 60 years. The likes of Johnny Canuck, Nelvana of the Northern Lights, Men of the Mountain, and a handful of others appeared back in the early 40s. Londoner Eddie Smith has amassed a rare collection of a number of old Canadian comics.
Canadian comic books first were published, it would be the beginning of the end of December 1940, January 1941. And you had a thriving Canadian comic book industry for about 5 years. And then it really died down again.
With decades of experience of collecting unique comic books under his belt, and with a collection of nearly 10,000, Eddie can also be considered an expert in the history of Canadian comics.
Certainly the Canadian whites are being collected rather fiercely at the moment. Most of these Canadian comic books were in black and white, at least the insides, and had color covers, and so we refer to them as Canadian whites. The Canadian color comics, which were extensions of the black and white, the ones from Anglo America, they lasted till early 40, till the end of 46. And on one side and the writing on the other side. This would be these
The approach to comic books, whether it be the art, writing, or style, has changed dramatically since the 1940s. Many of today's talents, such as Leonard Kirk, Pat Lee, Dave Ross, or Stuart Immonen, have their own signature looks, with a more diverse and individually expressive style than ever before. Because of this, they have a very solid fan base and very successful careers within the industry. But where do unknown and aspiring artists go to express themselves? How do they meet people who have similar goals and aspirations to do with comic books? Is there a place to go? This is where a number of comic book fans, readers, artists, writers, and people who just appreciate the medium itself come to gather once a month. With a beer in one hand and a pencil in the other, they all go to work.
People hear that we're involved in comics, and frequently their first reaction is, "Oh, they still make those?" And we hear this all the time, and it's shocking and it's very disappointing, but not surprising and certainly not their fault. We want people to bring out the best that they can, but we certainly know that the Jam is not the place to be doing your, that uber critically acclaimed work. It's just not going to happen because there are other influences, other things that conspire against it. But that's not the goal. The goal is to just, really the social atmosphere and friendly work, really.
Still, there is much more going on at a Jam than just getting together and out drawing. Specifically, each person is given a blank page of standard comic book illustration paper, 11 by 17 inches. They then draw one panel of anything they want or something related to the theme of the evening. Once done, they sign their name onto the back of the page and pass the page on to another person who subsequently draws the next panel. This continues until the page is filled.
Just bringing people together over doing comics. It's also a social event, so it's good to feel that sense of camaraderie with people and just to continue it as a social event and also to push people artistically. As an end goal, I don't think it's necessary to have a top of Everest to reach. I think it's just necessary to go on the journey.
I do, art stuff all day at work, graphic design, and most of it's very corporate and boring. Like I do agricultural stuff, so I've always liked comic books and I like to draw, so it's a good combination.
This is my very first time here at the Jam.
How are you finding it?
It's fascinating. It's very challenging. I see all the work that everybody else is putting in. It's very inspiring. And I like this what's called stream of consciousness that's put into the page, and we'll put something together and we'll create this comic. It's kind of tried to lead us somewhere, but it's up to somebody else.
Though most of the attendees to the Jam are male, there are a few women who attend as well.
Well, it makes me feel like I have a life, first of all. And aside from that, because of the type of work that I do in general, which is design, and it's really fast-paced design, I don't always get a chance to sort of sit and postulate on what I want to do, and I sort of get to let my mind wander a little more than it would necessarily when I have to get things
done. The key
done.
goal of the Jam is to promote the medium of comics, art, and fun. It's a social gathering as much as it is a venue of artistic expression.
We just want everyone to just be comfortable and talk and joke and have a good time and just be very relaxed about it and not so into your own work, really, to sort of bounce off other people and have really a more sort of...
One of the regulars at the comic jams is local artist and self-publisher Jaye Williams.
Well, part of the allure of self-publishing is the control you have and the choices you get to make concerning direction and character, story development, and just your choice in those stories that you want to. I first started self-publishing comic books in January '99, and I started with my story, The Sorcerer's Children, which is a fantasy adventure. And we're also developing other ideas. London itself as a venue, especially for Sealwell Press, has been very good for us because the retailers here are very open to you when you can approach them personally. And they're always great about promoting local artists, local stories. It helps them too when you can go into their store and be there physically to help sell your book. Because that's the one thing the retailers really want to do. They really want to sell your book. And when you can be there physically, as we can be in London, they are really supportive. And when you're there for them, they will be there for you.
19-year-old illustrator and writer Angela Jordan is another aspiring artist who publishes her own manga-inspired comic book, Armored Prophet.
The story is Armored Prophet, and it's a science fiction story about a young alien girl who's sent to Earth, and she has to figure out why she's there and battle aliens. I don't really know where it's going to go right now. I'd like to keep doing comic books and self-publish them or get a group together, do it together. Lots of girls especially. I'd like to see more girls involved. Well, with the growth of manga, there's girls manga, a lot of it, and a lot more girls are being involved in drawing the anime style and getting into doing their own comics. But it's just a matter of coming up with their own ideas and their own characters and then putting it forward. I think that's a big step for a lot of people.
With the likes of Allison and Angela entering the comic book industry, there's still a shortage of women. But even with their numbers a lot fewer than their male counterparts, women have still managed to make a mark of their own. Trina Robbins has written at least 2 books on the subject of female characters in comic books, covering such recognizable characters as Catwoman and Supergirl to Wonder Woman and Elektra. Robbins has witnessed and written about the radical developments and changes of female characters over the years, some of the most dramatic changes being the artistic styles that women are represented in. With established and aspiring talent in the industry as a whole, there is still a continuous need to draw more people into it, both as professionals and as fans. With declining sales a few years back, publishers had to ask themselves what they can do to reinvigorate the interest in comic books again. What can they do to promote the medium, make more sales, and keep the interest in comic books alive? Free Comic Book Day is an annual event in which comic book stores from all around the world literally give comic books away for free. Some stores give them away if a customer buys something, while others pass them out no matter what. The common goal among them all is to increase the business and readership of comic books.
You like to have your space. Probably like. I need to get the stamps because I can win lots of cool stuff. I just like the style of the art and stuff, the storyline.
If you go to each of the stores on Free Comic Book Day, then you get a chance to win some prizes. So many kids on the computer all the time, it's nice to get them in to look at a comic book. In order to expand the market, for more people to come in and read comics, to get the little kids reading comics, it's a good thing, definitely.
The big thing about Free Comic Book Day can be summed up in one word: marketing. Now this reaches all the way to the companies that publish comic books, to the film studios such as Warner Brothers, Columbia Pictures, and Paramount Pictures, who produce TV shows and movies based on comic books. Still, even with so many comic book adapted films, the jury's still out on whether the movies have increased sales of the comic books they're based upon. Though not everyone likes the number of Hollywood studios buying the movie rights to comic books, whether it be big-budget superhero movies like Spider-Man, X-Men, or the Hulk, or lesser-known titles such as Road to Perdition, Ghost World, or American Splendor. The truth is, it's on the increase. More movies are being made, and more film rights are being purchased every year. Feature films, television series, and animated shows, it all comes back to the original source, the comic book. It's true that the source material can be translated into other mediums, but does it still qualify as a recognizable and respected form of art? Should it be? Illustrator Alex Ross is one of the most popular comic book artists working today. Unlike other illustrators, though, he uses watercolor paints as his primary medium, bringing a very unique and critically acclaimed style to the superhero genre. His work is very impressive and takes a lot of time, effort, and skill to accomplish. So does this now qualify comic books as a traditional form of art? Some see only great works from history and can't help but to find art only as the struggles and accomplishments akin to these artists and their works. But not everyone in the field of traditional art would agree with that.
No, I was just saying that there's obvious examples of comic books in history in churches, in stained glass windows, in the carving over the front door, or the carvings and the paintings around the upper gallery of the churches, because they were for poor people who couldn't understand the Latin of the 4-hour services they had to stand through. You didn't get to sit there.
Kevin Bice is a fine artist in London. He's taught art professionally as well as had numerous art shows over the years. For the last several years, Kevin, along with a number of other local artists, have hosted an annual art show that's attracted hundreds of people. It's a very successful gala event that shows off the art of some of London's best talent.
But comic books are something I loved as a kid and would get a hold of whenever I could.
That as a superhero drawing with the sweeping lines and
With such a traditional approach to art, Kevin nonetheless sees a great value in the comic book medium.
And again, the same sort of thing, very exaggerated poses, the lines of the hair being used, look at the lines of the trunk.
Public, sometimes art historians, museum people, anybody connected with art, tend to make art an elite activity. Art scares a lot of people. They don't want to go to a museum because they feel like they'll look stupid if they don't understand what they're doing. They don't know how to have an opinion, so they tend to take popular opinions about things. So I really find any form of art that takes away this elitism about art to be important. And I think that's part of the role that comic books have to play. Now that's not because comic books are always funny or light. Comic books can be very heavy and serious. But they're a form of art that is accessible or seems accessible to anybody. People feel that they can pick it up and they can leaf through it. It might remind them of when they were kids and they had comics, or perhaps comics just inspire kids to want to draw.
Kevin Bice's artistic style may not reflect the more typical or popular styles usually found in comic books. However, this only adds more merit to the artistic integrity and to the value that comic books contribute to the art world. Without a doubt, the best forum that showcases true artistic examples and expressions of comic book art is at a convention. There are literally dozens of comic book conventions held all around the world every year. The biggest in Canada, however, just happens to be in Toronto. Tens of thousands attend the convention annually. Collectors, sci-fi and fantasy fans, movie aficionados, retail owners, men, women, and children from all walks of life. Anime and manga fans get to meet some of their favorite cartoon stars. The comic book convention is arguably the best forum for these fans to meet their favorite celebrities as well.
Well, pretty much this is the big show here, and I love the city. I love Toronto, and it's just a lot of fun. It's a nice, easygoing show. It's not as big as San Diego, which nothing is, but I just have a lot of fun whenever we come here.
The movie and TV celebrities vary from big screen to small, some of whom find the experience a lot of fun, like Star Wars and X-Men actor Ray Park.
The fans have been great, it's just, I've done a few conventions now. I never knew conventions existed, and when Star Wars and X-Men came out, I got invites to loads of conventions, and there's ones I could do and ones I couldn't do, so. But the fans have just been perfect, There's nothing wrong with the guys, everyone comes here. I love meeting them, they give me insight to just, to the whole convention. If I was younger and they had martial art conventions, I'd be there, so I'm a fan as well.
But it's not the star power that is the central draw for the fans of the convention. It's the comic books, the action figures, the valuable autographs, and meeting some of the top talent the industry has to offer. Dreamwave Productions has been a mainstay with the Toronto Convention for a number of years.
I can say, for instance, in conventions and in signings, it seems that there's a lot of surge in Toronto about the interest in a lot of our books. A lot of people ask for stacks of books to sign, And when we went to the San Diego Comic-Con and stuff, it was still an enormous amount of people, but they didn't ask for like enormous amounts of books to sign. And we're absolutely fine with whatever we get because it's kind of the fans that really make us who we are. So we really want to, we don't care if it's like 50 books or whatever, it just, we sign them, you know, because it's, I mean, why not, you know, so.
Leonard Kirk is also one of the convention's most popular artists, having worked on such fan favorites as Supergirl, JSA, and Superboy, among others.
I'm hoping that it's getting a little bit better. For years, sales just keep going down and down and down and down, and it looks like the past year or two, as a whole, the industry seems to be doing a little bit better. I doubt that it'll ever get to be as big as it was, 10, 12 years ago.
I think from an early age, it was the artwork more than anything that attracted me to comic books. And of course, if you want to draw, if you love drawing, and you're looking for an outlet for that, there are only limited number of things you can do these days. One of them is comic books. Another one might be to do storyboards. Another one after that would be to work in animation, which of course requires lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of drawing, but
Leonard Kirk and Dave Ross have had some major success with the bigger American comic book companies like Marvel and DC Comics. And like many of the aspiring comic book talent, they can often be found in the heart and soul of the convention, Artist Alley.
Our book is called A Monk's Tale. It's set in ancient China, and it's about 3 monks who leave their monastery for the first time. They encounter some corruption in the military, and they see some impure things less perfect than what they're used to, and they kind of interfere. And they're trying to right the wrongs, but they're essentially digging themselves deeper.
The book's called Eclipse in Vega. It's published under our company called Triple S Comics or SSS Comics. It's about these 2 college-age girls who develop superpowers, and because they don't know how to deal with things, they've never been superheroes before, they seek out the help of a retired superhero who just sort of mentors them and shows them the ropes.
It's not quite like it was in '89 when Batman came out and the Bat books were just anything that had Batman on it sold. It was insane.
Comics, I think it's going to be a lot more graphic novels. Individual issues. The market's shrinking. A lot of people are now waiting for the graphic novels to come out. It's less expensive to get the whole story, and if you're not a real collector, it's disposable.
It's a tough business, and you've got to be really serious about it. You've got to have the right attitude of, again, I'm not in this for the money. Granted, there's money to be made if you're lucky and your material is good. But again, there's an awful lot of people sitting around here. I've got people that, they're fans of mine, they come and talk to me and they're doing books around and they'll say things like, oh boy, this show is terrible. I can't believe it. But then I look at the material they're producing and it's amateurish, and I can understand why. Oh, I sold 2 copies yesterday. And it's like, well, gee, I've sold 100 copies today, but I don't want to tell them that because that's depressing. But
a veteran of the Canadian comic book industry is Janet Hetherington. She's also been a fan favorite and, for many, an ambassador for Canadians, and women in particular.
Well, what's interesting about comic books is, first of all, I grew up loving comic books, reading them, absorbing them. They were a real source of entertainment for me, and again, that really is what is the attraction. The sense of creating an entertainment and reaching people with your art. It's a wonderful mix of both words and pictures. And with comic books, you're able to tell a story in both visual and a written style. They were a real source of entertainment for me, and again, that really is what is the attraction.
So, how does the future of comic books look anyways? Is it bleak? Do aspiring writers and artists have any chance of breaking into the big companies? Are comic books still even popular amongst consumers?
Well, one thing, we've got 5 retail stores, which is pretty rare for a town our size. Excuse me, for a town our size. I think Toronto's probably got 10, but Toronto's, however, I don't know how many times, 10 times bigger than.
And the same holds true now. It's a great way to get kids to read. I mean, So what? There's pictures. There's still words. You still have to read them.
I think there's always going to be comic books, so there's no way that technology or books can on a screen can compare with actually holding a product in your hand.
You don't need batteries to work them. You don't need to worry if you're trading with your friend whether his system has enough megahertz or megabytes or they're on the same format or anything along those lines. You just have to trade comic books.
The contributions of Canadians are far-reaching and have impacted and helped define what the world of comic books have become on a global scale. From retailers, the aspiring artists and writers, to the established professionals in the Hollywood machine. It's a powerful form of art that continues to thrive, and more than likely, always will. Whether it's recognized as a true form of art in general, or by art collectors and museum curators, it really doesn't matter. Comic books have been around for decades. They've been translated into many different forms and have made an impact on almost every country on the planet. And by the looks of things today, they're not going away anytime soon.